They told me Christmas was canceled. Too tight this year, just staying in. So I spent the day alone. That night, my cousin posted a video. A full house, turkey carving, family-only invitations. Everyone was there, except me. I stayed silent until Dad texted, "Can you help with the mortgage monthly?" I replied, "Ask the family you chose." Then I cut off every payment and watched the fallout. I, 31M, stared at my phone screen on Christmas morning, reading the group chat message for the third time. My aunt had sent it 2 weeks ago. Christmas was canceled this year. Everyone staying in, money too tight. I understood. Times were rough for everyone. I spent the day alone in my apartment, ordering Chinese takeout and watching old movies. It wasn't ideal, but family comes first, and if they needed to save money, I respected that decision. I'd been sending my parents $1,500 monthly for their mortgage for the past 3 years anyway. After my promotion at the engineering firm, it seemed like the right thing to do. That evening, I was scrolling through social media when my cousin's Instagram story popped up. The video started with a perfect dining room setup, white tablecloth, crystal glasses, the works. Then the camera panned across faces I recognized immediately. My parents sat at the head of the table, my dad carving what looked like a 20-pound turkey. My aunt and uncle were there, laughing at something off camera. My 2 cousins, my sister with her husband and kids, even my grandmother who I thought was too sick to travel. The caption read, "Family only Christmas. Nothing beats tradition." I watched it again and again. Every single person from our family was there except me. The turkey looked expensive. The wine bottles on the table weren't cheap grocery store brands. This wasn't a struggling family cutting costs. This was a deliberate exclusion. My hands shook as I set the phone down. 3 years of mortgage payments. 3 years of being the reliable son who never asked questions. 3 years of thinking I was helping my family stay afloat while they apparently had enough money for an elaborate Christmas dinner without me. I walked to my kitchen counter where my laptop sat open. My banking app was still logged in from earlier when I'd paid my own bills. The recurring payment to my parents' mortgage company was scheduled to go out in 4 days, January 1st, like clockwork. I canceled it. Then I sat back and waited. Update 1. The text from my dad came on January 15th, 2 weeks after the missed payment. He asked if everything was okay with my bank account because the mortgage payment hadn't gone through. He wondered if there was some technical issue and if I could call the bank to sort it out. I replied that my bank account was fine and working perfectly. He called me an hour later. His voice carried that familiar tone of barely controlled panic that I remembered from my childhood whenever money got tight. He asked directly what was going on with the mortgage payment and whether I was having financial problems myself. I told him I wasn't having any financial problems. Then I asked him how Christmas was. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Finally, he said it was quiet, just him and Mom at home. He asked again about the mortgage payment, saying they really needed it to go through because they were counting on it. I asked him to hold on a moment. I opened Instagram and found my cousin's video from Christmas Day. Then I described exactly what I saw. The full table, the turkey, every family member present, the family-only caption. He started stammering about how that was just a small gathering, nothing fancy, that I had said I was okay with Christmas being canceled. He insisted they barely spent any money and that I was overreacting. I asked him why I wasn't invited to this small gathering if everyone else was family. He said they didn't want to bother me since I lived across town and they knew I was busy with work. He said they figured I'd understand and that next year would be different. I told him I did understand. I understood that they had made a choice about who was family and who wasn't. I told him the mortgage was his responsibility now and hung up. Update 2. My phone exploded over the next week. My sister called first, angry that I was being petty over one missed holiday. She said I was putting my parents' house at risk over hurt feelings and that I needed to grow up. When I asked her why she didn't mention the Christmas gathering to me, she said it was last minute and they didn't think to call. I asked her how last minute a 20-pound turkey and formal table setting could be. She hung up. My aunt called next, the same one who had originally announced Christmas was canceled. She told me I was being dramatic and that family sometimes makes decisions that might hurt feelings, but that doesn't mean I should retaliate financially. She said my parents were stressed about the mortgage and this wasn't helping anyone. I asked her why she lied about Christmas being canceled when she was clearly planning a family dinner. She said it wasn't a lie, that they just decided later to have a small get-together, and I was making it bigger than it needed to be. I asked her why every other family member was included in this spontaneous decision except me. She started talking about how I seemed busy lately and they didn't want to impose. I reminded her that I'd been sending my parents $1,500 monthly for 3 years without being asked. I told her that didn't sound like someone who was too busy for family. She got quiet. Then she said maybe they made a mistake, but that didn't justify putting my parents' house in jeopardy. She begged me to reconsider and said they'd make sure I was included going forward. I told her it was too late for that now. The trust was broken, and they had shown me exactly where I stood. I told her they could figure out the mortgage the same way they figured out Christmas dinner without me. Update 3. By February, the calls got desperate. My cousin, the one who posted the video, reached out through Facebook Messenger. He apologized for the video and said he didn't realize I wasn't invited. He claimed it was just an oversight and that everyone felt terrible about how things had played out. I screenshot his own caption, "Family-only Christmas. Nothing beats tradition," and sent it back to him. I asked him how you accidentally exclude someone from a family-only gathering and then post about it publicly. He read the message but never responded. My mother called in tears, saying they might lose the house. She begged me to reconsider, promising that nothing like this would ever happen again. She said she'd personally make sure I was included in everything from now on and that they never meant to hurt me. I asked her whose idea it was to not invite me to Christmas dinner. She claimed it wasn't anyone's specific idea, just a miscommunication that got out of hand. I asked her how 15 people end up at a dinner through miscommunication while one person gets told Christmas is canceled entirely. She couldn't answer that. She started crying harder, saying I was their son and they loved me, and couldn't I find it in my heart to forgive them. She said the mortgage payment was the difference between keeping and losing their home. I told her I was also their son on Christmas Day when they chose to exclude me. I reminded her that for 3 years, I prioritized their financial stability over my own savings, my own goals, my own financial future. I asked her where that same consideration was when they were planning their family dinner. She promised things would change, that I'd be their first call for every gathering, every holiday, every family event. She swore on her mother's grave that nothing like this would happen again. I told her I believed her. I believed that now that their house payment was at risk, they would definitely include me. But that wasn't the same as wanting me there because I was family. That was including me because I was a bank account. Update 4. March brought a different approach. My sister showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Saturday morning. She looked tired, older somehow. She said the family was falling apart over this situation and that everyone was fighting about whose fault it was. She admitted they had made the Christmas plans weeks in advance. She said the idea was to have a nice dinner without any outside stress or complications, and somehow in their planning, they convinced themselves I'd be happier doing my own thing anyway. She acknowledged how stupid that sounded now. I asked her what she meant by outside stress or complications. She shifted uncomfortably and said sometimes I brought up topics that made gatherings tense, like when I talked about work stress or mentioned feeling left out of family decisions. She said they wanted Christmas to be purely positive this year. So I was excluded because I had occasionally mentioned feeling excluded. The irony wasn't lost on me. She said my parents were talking about selling the house. The mortgage payment without my contribution was stretching them beyond their means, especially with property taxes going up. She said Dad had aged years in the past few months, constantly worried about making ends meet. I reminded her that this was exactly the situation I'd been preventing for 3 years with my monthly payments. I'd been quietly ensuring their financial stability while apparently being seen as a source of stress and complications. She asked what it would take for me to resume the payments. She said they'd all apologized, they'd acknowledged their mistake, and they were committed to including me going forward. She wanted to know what else I needed to hear. I told her it wasn't about what I needed to hear. It was about what I had learned about my place in this family. They had shown me that I was valuable for my financial contributions, but not valuable enough to share a holiday meal. That told me everything I needed to know about how they really saw me. She left crying, saying I was destroying the family over one mistake. Update 5. By April, my parents had put the house on the market. My dad sent me a text with the listing link, saying this was what my stubbornness had accomplished. He said 40 years of memories were being packed up because his son decided to punish them instead of forgive them. I drove by the house that weekend. The for sale sign looked stark against the front lawn where I'd played as a kid. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, remembering birthday parties in that backyard, Christmas mornings in that living room, family dinners around that kitchen table. But I also remembered Christmas Day 3 months ago, sitting alone in my apartment while that same kitchen table hosted everyone but me. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin, the one who'd posted the video. He said he'd heard about the house being sold and wanted me to know that everyone regretted how Christmas had gone down. He said the family wasn't the same without me and that he missed our conversations at gatherings. I asked him why he missed our conversations now, but hadn't missed them enough to include me in Christmas dinner. He said he didn't realize I wasn't invited until after it was over. He said if he'd known, he would have said something or left himself. I asked him how he didn't realize I wasn't invited when he specifically captioned his video "family only." That implied he knew exactly who was family and who wasn't. He stopped responding after that. Update 6. The house sold in June. My parents moved into a small apartment across town, and the family dynamics shifted completely. Without the central gathering place, the elaborate holiday celebrations and weekend dinners became much smaller affairs. My extended family seemed to drift apart without my parents' house as the natural meeting point. My aunt called me after they'd moved, saying she hoped I was happy with the outcome. She said the family was scattered now, that traditions were broken, and relationships were strained. She blamed me for tearing apart decades of family unity over one perceived slight. I asked her if she thought family unity was something that could be bought and sold. I reminded her that their unity had depended on my financial contribution while excluding me from their emotional connection. She said I was overthinking it, that families make mistakes, and that my reaction was disproportionate to their error. She said normal people would have been hurt, but would have found a way to move forward instead of blowing everything up. I told her she was right that normal families make mistakes. But normal families also include all their members in major celebrations. Normal families don't lie about canceling holidays while secretly planning elaborate dinners. And normal families don't maintain relationships solely because someone pays their bills. She said I'd made my point and won my revenge, and asked if I felt better now that everyone was suffering. I told her I didn't feel better. I felt sad that it had taken a financial crisis for them to realize they wanted me around. I felt disappointed that 3 years of supporting my parents hadn't earned me a place at their table. And I felt validated in my decision because their response to losing my money was to attack my character rather than examine their own choices. Update 7. It's been 8 months now since Christmas Day. My life has changed in ways I didn't expect. Without the monthly mortgage payment, I've been able to save aggressively. I'm looking at buying my own house soon, something that would have taken years longer if I'd continued supporting my parents' mortgage. I've also started dating someone I met through work. She knows the basic situation with my family, but doesn't understand why I don't just apologize and move on. She says family is family, and holding grudges only hurts everyone involved. I tried to explain that this wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about recognizing a pattern that had probably existed for years, but that I'd been too close to see. The Christmas exclusion wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of how they'd always seen me. The responsible one. The provider. The one who'd understand if he was left out because he was busy anyway. Looking back, I can see other times when I was expected to be understanding while others were accommodated. When my sister needed help moving, I was called. When my cousin wanted career advice, I was the go-to. When my parents needed financial help, I was their first thought. But when it came to celebration, connection, and joy, somehow I was often the one who'd understand if I wasn't included or if plans changed. My girlfriend thinks I'm being too analytical, that families are messy and imperfect, and that my expectations are too high. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am overthinking it. But when I imagine going back, resuming those payments, sitting at future family dinners knowing I'm there because they need my money, it makes my stomach turn. I can't unknow what I know now about how they see me. Final update. Last week, my dad texted me asking if we could meet for coffee. He said he'd been thinking about everything that happened and wanted to talk without the pressure of the family or the house situation hanging over us. We met at a small cafe downtown. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. He'd lost weight, and his hair seemed grayer. He ordered black coffee and sat quietly for a few minutes before speaking. He said he'd spent months being angry at me, feeling like I'd abandoned them when they needed me most. But recently, he'd started thinking about Christmas from my perspective. He said he tried to imagine how he would have felt if his family had excluded him from a holiday dinner while taking his money every month. He admitted that the Christmas dinner had been planned for weeks. He said my mother had suggested inviting me, but my aunt had convinced everyone that I seemed stressed lately and might prefer a quiet day to myself. He said in the moment, it seemed reasonable, even considerate. But he said when he really thought about it, they'd made assumptions about what I wanted without asking me. They decided I'd be fine being excluded without checking if that was true. And they'd done it while taking my financial support for granted. He apologized. Not the desperate, house-saving apology from months ago, but a quiet acknowledgement that they'd treated me like an obligation rather than a choice. He said he understood why I'd cut off the payments and why I'd stayed away from the family. He didn't ask me to resume the mortgage payments. He didn't ask me to come to the next family gathering. He just said he was sorry and that he hoped someday we could rebuild our relationship on better terms. I told him I appreciated his honesty. I said I'd been angry for months, but mostly I'd been sad. Sad that it took losing their house for them to see me as a person rather than a resource. We talked for 2 hours. About my childhood, about his expectations for me as the successful son, about how family roles can become traps without anyone realizing it. He said he was proud of me for standing up for myself, even though it had cost everyone something important. As we were leaving, he asked if I'd be open to occasional coffee meetings, just the two of us, with no agenda other than getting to know each other again. I said yes. I don't know if I'll ever resume a relationship with the extended family. The trust feels too broken, the dynamics too toxic. But maybe my dad and I can find something new, something based on choice rather than obligation. My girlfriend was right about one thing. Family is messy and imperfect, but she was wrong about something else. Sometimes the loving thing isn't to forgive and forget. Sometimes it's to draw boundaries and insist on better. Sometimes it's to walk away from people who only value what you provide, not who you are. I'm still angry sometimes. I'm still sad about what was lost. But I'm also proud of myself for recognizing my worth and demanding better treatment. The financial independence I've gained by redirecting that mortgage money has given me options I never had before. And the emotional independence I've gained by walking away from that family dynamic has given me something even more valuable. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm living my life for me, not as a supporting character in someone else's story. That's worth more than any family dinner.